And now, it's time for another Dice Tower review with Tom Vasel.
Howdy, folks. Today we're taking a look at a game called Indian Summer. Indian Summer is the second in a trilogy of games from Uwe Rosenberg of tile laying. He made, this is the fourth game actually, he's made where you're filling in a grid. The first was Patchwork, which has seen very, very great success. Then we saw Cottage Garden and Feast for Odin released last year. Feast for Odin was a big, grandiose game that used this tile laying as a smaller part of it. And then Cottage Garden, you filled in gardens with this. This is a sequel to Cottage Garden called Indian Summer. Indian Summer, which is about walking through a forest and there's the leaves everywhere. If you've ever been in New England or the Mideast, United States during the fall season and see these leaves all over, it is a really gorgeous sight, although it does mean the evil winter's coming. And this game is trying to replicate that. Let me show you how it plays. So the whole goal of this game is each player is going to get a board and everyone's going to get a different board. They have two different sides. The whole goal of this game is to cover this board with tiles. You cover the whole board with tiles, you win. That is the whole game. Now here in the middle we have the common path where you're going to have different tiles. The different tiles are colored just so you know how many squares each one takes up. There's 3, 4, and 5 squares in different Tetris-y style shapes. There's also some animal tiles here. But the game is really going to focus on each player. Each player has their own board that they're going to have, and they have their own path here in which you're going to start the game with 2 3s, 2 4s, and a 5. You also start with some of these little special tiles, the treasure tiles. I should mention here that this mushroom, berry, and nut are 3 of the 4. There's also a feather that's involved. They have 2 different sides to them. This is like a more realistic side. This is an easier to see side. It's up to you. So on your turn, you have a main action. One of your actions can be take a squirrel token, which is a 1 square, and put it somewhere in your grid. You're probably not going to do that very often. You're probably going to want to take one of your tiles and place it in your grid. Now, when you place a tile in your grid, you can place it any way you want. You can cover up things. You'll notice there's a hole in every tile. If you put this hole over a treasure, you'll take a treasure token of that type and put it on top of that hole. Well, when do you get that treasure? Well, let's pretend I put one here, and I put one here. Nothing is put on top of these holes. And then I put one here to I'll put a nut on top of this hole. Now when this happens, when I fill in this whole area here, it's completely filled in, all these tokens I will get, and I have a chance to use these. Not only that, whenever you make a series of holes that matches one of the animal tile shapes, in this case, it matches the bluebird one, you can place it on top of these holes, covering them up. That gives you all the treasures there again. So that would give me 2 more nuts that I would have as I place this here. You can never put tiles on top of holes. You can't put them on top of animals. The only reason these animal tiles exist is essentially to give you more treasures. And so that's the game. You're going to be slowly putting these out. Now, when this area runs out here, you'll be pulling from the common area. There is a bush here in the common area, so you know to pull the tiles like this, and this bush will move around. If you run out of tiles in the common area, there's a pile here, and you'll be refilling it in order. And when that pile runs out, well, likely someone's won the game by that point anyway. You'll see that there's different tiles here. These tiles are bigger ones. They're harder to get out. But if you do, you automatically get a blueberry, a nut, or a feather for putting them out. These tiles here also show you that at any point you can turn in 2 blueberries for a nut, 2 nuts for a mushroom, or 2 mushrooms for a feather. And you can always, of course, trade something in for something that's lesser. Now, what are these treasures for? Well, again, the whole point of the game is not about getting these treasures. It's about essentially making sure that you fill your thing as fast as you can. If you spend a berry, and this is an extra thing that you can do in your turn, you can refill your path to 5 tiles. So if you have fewer than 5 tiles here, let's say I only have 1, I would be pulling them from the main path following the bush, and I can refill it. If I have 5, I can put a 6th tile there. So the berries let you get more tiles. Nuts let you take a free squirrel and put it out. Normally taking a squirrel is a full action, but a nut you can spend to take it as an extra action. A mushroom takes the place, when you spend a mushroom, it takes the place of your main action, and you're going to basically steal 2 tiles from someone else's, the one that's closest to their backpack. You'll steal those and put them on your 4. So you get to place 2 tiles from other people. And the feather, which is very similar, lets you pull 2 tiles from your own area and put them out. So the mushroom and feather lets you put out 2 tiles instead of 1. That's pretty much the whole game. There's also a solo version with a solo variant where you keep track of how many tiles you put out. But other than that, it's a race. Fill your floor first, and you're the winner. Let's take a real quick look at a complete floor. And there you go. The complete floor. Autumn. It's nice to see the leaves. This person has won the game. Okay, so this is a tile laying game, but the rule book said in it something to the effect of, don't get so caught up in getting treasures, cover your forest floor. And I was like, yeah. And you know what? Don't get caught up in treasures, cover your forest floor. It's really critical in this game it's essentially a racing game. Get your stuff out as fast as you can. Now, those treasures are important. As you place pieces out, having a hole over treasure is a good thing to do. And you do so, you're going to get that little treasure token. You're going to be able to use those treasure tokens to help you put things out faster. That's good. But if you slow your speed down to get more treasure tokens so that you can go faster, you're really hurting yourself. And I think that's kind of a genius thing about this game, because there is amazing things. A feather, great, I can put out 2 tiles. But if I spend 3 turns to get that feather, have I wasted my time? Now, if I use an animal tile, I might get 3 feathers out of the deal, or 2 feathers out of the deal. Well, 3 if I use the one specific animal tile. Is that worth it? Well, sure, but how many turns did you take to do it? Now, this is a thinky game as you're sitting there, and it's going to appeal to people as they like to put in the little things. It's definitely more thinky of a game than the first one, Cottage Garden. When I played Cottage Garden, I had this kind of almost zen moment as I just filled in my garden and then discarded it, got a new garden, filled that in. I had a good time doing it. It was easy going. This one is more of a tense thing. I got to fill this in. I got to fill in the whole thing. It has the big circle, very similar to Patchwork, another one of Rosenberg's games. And I will say that it does take up a lot of table space. I wish that there was a way to have all these tiles that weren't, maybe just pull them from a bag. I'm not sure, but you do want to look there. I felt like that part of the game was slightly clunky because you would go around this big thing, then as it emptied, we had new ones to it. It just seems like there might have been a better way to do it. But I did like the 3 different colors. Easy to tell if it was a 3, 4, or 5 tile. The 3s are easier to fit in. The 5s cover more area, though. Those squirrels, a pain in the neck to take them, but they will fill in the holes. Do you fill in section after section to get the treasures faster? Or do you just fill in stuff as fast as you can? Every board completely different. The holes in the tile, which seems a little odd at first, really does work well. It's not a hard game to teach. In the rules, there's like 8 things about you cannot put a tile on top of another tile. You can't put a tile over the edge. We get all that, right? It's very obvious. Just put a tile in your grid. It makes sense. And so the rule book is actually longer than it needs to be, which is fine by me. Again, fun and easy to teach. And it's gorgeous. The whole thing just has that whole, wow, Mom. The Autumn 4, I mean, this game looks really good. The cover is actually okay, but the game looks much more interesting than that. You saw that finished product. It just looks great. And it doesn't take long. The box here says 15 minutes per player. I think that's very accurate. I have not played the solitaire version, but that still, gives you kind of an interesting puzzle to work with. But I do like this one a lot. I'll be adding it to my collection. I think I prefer it over Cottage Garden. It may actually replace Cottage Garden for me. Comparing it to other tile laying games, I think I still like Barren Park a little better than this one. But this one is definitely one of my favorites in this genre. I know he's going to keep using games in its mechanism. There's a 3rd one coming. Bring it. So definitely one to check out. That's Indian Summer. Dice Tower Judgment. Excellent.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews, as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at Dicetowernetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.
Shut the door! There.